China today is the most populous state in the world, with nearly 1.5 billion inhabitants, an incredible high number that hides important critical issues and problems behind it. For example, famine, poverty, scarcity of natural resources, and much more. In this video, we will talk about how China got to this point, the problem it is living, and the possible solutions. All this in Chapter 8 of Countdown. It all began around the 1950s, during Chairman Mao's great jump forward that made China take huge steps forward, passing in 6 years from a state that lived almost of agriculture to the industrial era. During these years, China created the foundations for the world superpower it is today. Citizens had full confidence in the Communist Party and in their leader Mao Zedong. Furthermore, in the face of this violent economic development, China did not care at all about the environment and resources and, too boldly, did not notice the bad choices that would have turned against it in the future. Particularly in the 60s, after a terrible famine that killed almost 40 million people, emerged the need to control the population, which in those years was growing exponentially. These problems had already been highlighted in 1953, following the results of a census which showed that in those years there were about 600 million people. Chairman Mao, however, in line with the theories of Marx and Engels, believed that the population was a force to be exploited and not an obstacle. For these reasons, under Mao hegemony, concrete birth control were never applied, and the theories of Malthus, who on the contrary claimed that the pressure of overpopulation on resources would limit production, were banned in China. However, concerns remained, and many were concerned about how excessive population growth would affect China's economic and industrial development. For these reasons, a group of scientists and experts was commissioned to create model economic scenarios in order to understand the limits of development in the face of overpopulation and how resources should be reallocated. This interest of China stems from its ambition to become a world power on a par with Europe and the United States. While starting from 1967, in China Mao staged a terrible cultural revolution that led to the closure of many universities and the arrest of students and professors. This group of scientists, among Wang, Yang Zhenghua, and Song Yang, stood out, had the tools and the more advanced computers of the country, and, the most important thing, they had the possibility to travel abroad in order to take inspiration from the Western model for their research. And it is thanks to this that Yang and Song came into possession of the book that will revolutionize everything. I'm talking about The Limits of the Growth. This book was written by a group of researchers from MIT, the so-called Club of Rome, who, in accordance with the theories of Malthus, warned that overpopulation and the excessive exploitation of resources will generate a terrible catastrophe. This book inspired the two researchers who, at the 79th National Population Theory Symposium, exposed the theory that basically say there were too many people. The optimal number calculated by the two scientists was in fact 700 million of people. The problem is that in 1979 in China there were already 900 million of people. The two theories of the two scientists soon spread around the world, and it was with the death of Mao and the rise of Deng Xiaoping that China entered in a new chapter of its history. Deng, unlike his predecessor, immediately understood the importance of the problem, so much so that in 1980 he imposed the famous one-child policy. As it can be easily understood from the name, this law required each couple to have a maximum of only one child, with very serious consequences for those who did not respect it. In fact, the woman risked a very high fine of about $30,000. the jail, or worse still, the sterilization. At the time, having a baby was like having a tumor that had to be eliminated as soon as possible. This law, however, was well accepted by citizens willing to sacrifice their children rather than relieve the terrible famine of 62. On one hand, this policy had its advantages. The birth rate in China, in fact, dropped dramatically, as everyone would expected. But on the other hand, however, some problems are emerged that certainly make us reflect on the price to pay for all this. A very sad problem is female infanticide. Traditionally, China has always been a strongly sexist country, in which the women are considered as less important than men. Especially in the rural world, it was essential to have as many children as possible males, able to sustain the family, and already in ancient times abortion and infanticide were two tools in the hands of families to control the size of itself. With the introduction of one-child policy, the situation got worse. In the countryside, the law is different. In fact, it was allowed to have 2 children. For the families, it was essential that at least one of the 2 children was male. Thanks also to the technological tools, it was possible to know the sex of the child even before birth, which led to the frequent use of abortion. The girls born were then left and adopted by uncles who could not have children, or as happened in the most cases, they were taken by force and then taken to an orphanage where they were adopted by Western families paying lots of money. This prioritization towards the male sex led to a strong imbalance among the population. In China, there are many more males than females. The data tell us that there are about 24 to 50 million more males than females. This imbalance both leads to a further decline in births, but also creates social problems. In fact, many males are forced to buy wives in Vietnam, where the market for women is widespread. Then, most of these, due to excessive debts and low wages, are left by their wives, families, and in some cases they even lose their homes, generating strong popular discontent. Finally, a further problem that worries the Chinese government concerns the generation change. In fact, due to the decline in the birth rate, there will soon be too many old people and few youngs who can take care of these elderly. There is therefore a risk that there are no more youngs who work, leading to a decline in labor and production, and most important thing, that pay contribution for pensions. However, not all the experts were in favor of this one-child policy. Some researchers, in fact, did an experiment with 4 provinces with about 8 million people in total. In these provinces, their one-child policy was not applied, and, on the contrary, families were given the possibility of having a maximum of 2 children. The results obtained showed how the population was under control. Aging was also controlled, and the relationship between the sexes was normal. In short, the debate on population control is still very complicated, and both solutions, maintaining population control or, on the contrary, letting go, have their pros and cons. The problems that afflict China, however, do not concern only the population. Even the Chinese natural territory has undergone important changes, which in the most cases have destroyed the existing equilibrium. With industrial development and the need to build new cities, China has gone to colonize land where they shouldn't have built, deforesting entire areas and radically changing the landscape and the ecosystem. Such radical changes in the land and flora of the place have caused very serious consequences. In particular, due to deforestation, the problem of flooding has increased, leading to serious disasters such as the flooding of the Yangtze River, in which thousands of people died and caused huge damage. Currently, various organizations are intervening, such as the Natural Capital Project, an international collaboration with the task of keeping ecosystems and the population living there in balance. In particular, the Green to Green project was implemented, in which many trees were implanted in the sloping lands in the hope of returning that territory to its origins and also of solving the problem of floods. The sloping land conversion plans to move more than 30 million people from their farms to cities in order to plant new trees. This initiative, however, immediately raises problems. In particular, it is necessary to find a new way to satisfy the national food requirement. In fact, it was thought of investing in satellite agricultural land in Africa, in Brazil, or in the Philippines, which will become the property of China and which can be cultivated to feed the Chinese people. The Chinese territory also boasts one of the richest ecosystems on the earth, with millions of plant and animal species. This immense biodiversity, however, risks disappearing due, on the one hand, to deforestation, that is the result of the rapid industrial and economic growth of China. On the other hand, due to traditions, popular beliefs, and political directions that have led almost to the extinction animal species, such as the panda or the tiger. China, over the time, is trying to remedy its mistakes, in some cases with success, which has the successful repopulation of the panda in its natural habitat, in some cases with poor results, as in the case of the planting of rubber trees in the Hainan Island, where these trees are killing the local flora. We must be honest, China is very far from solving the problems that afflicted, and the problem of overpopulation is an obstacle that must be resolved before reaching a point of no return.